Now, after the Qing dynasty collapse and the transfer of power, begins the modern history of the Triads. The Triads were enlisted by the Chinese National Party, or Kuomintang, when it came to power after the collapse of the Qing in 1911. Chinese secret societies remained in action through family ties. The swearing of an oath to join was common, strict rules, a family relationship among members, and duty of mutual help. There is also a hierarchy of functions and hereditary memberships within families. The Triads are sometimes referred to as Chinese mafia, or in mainland China as black societies. The Triads are effective in China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Chinatowns in the United States, Canada, Australia, Southeast Asia, New Zealand, and elsewhere. Chinese Triad societies control Chinese organized crime. They are some of the world's largest crime organizations. They might have more than 250,000 members, close to half of that in Hong Kong alone. They tried in the warlord era of the 1920s and 1930s, particularly in freewheeling Shanghai, where at its height the Shanghai-based Green Gang had 100,000 members and had connections with Chiang Kai-shek and assaulted journalists who criticized the Kuomintang. The term triad wasn't used in history. It's a relatively new English term used to describe the triangular symbols found on flags and banners used by the Hun clan, also known as the Heaven and Earth Society. The bosses of the Triads are called Dragon Heads, and the Triads are believed to control empires worth billions of dollars. The largest and most powerful Triad, Senyo, is believed to have 40,000 members, and the unnamed dragonhead of this triad was named Asia's weak list of the 15 most powerful people in Asia. A century ago, Hong Kong was the main triad center. It had hundreds of thousands of immigrants flowing in from mainland China. Today, there are a few dozen triads opposed to hundreds of gangs 100 years ago. Before Britain returned the city to Chinese control in 1997, the mainland authorities sought to co-opt triads in order to curb their assistance to pro-democracy demonstrators and promote stability during the sensitive handover period. China's chief law enforcement officer said the following: "The members of the Triads are not always gangsters. As long as they are patriots concerned with maintaining the prosperity of Hong Kong, we should respect them." The Triads do have a patriotic reputation, or did, by proxy. Their deepest commitment is to making money. Lo Twing, a professor at City University of Hong Kong who researches triads, said they don't work for political ideology. Individual triad members have their own ideologies, but triads as a group, they only work for money. In the last decades, triad members remained afloat and triads gangs remained in operation by cooperating with the police. One of Shanghai's most notorious figures was Shanghai Du Yuxing, Big Eared Du, a former sweet potato vendor who started his life of crime as a policeman, collecting protection money from local opium traders. As the head of the gang that controlled Shanghai opium trade, he reportedly funneled over $20 million a year to French authorities, who allowed him to run his operation unhindered in the French district of Shanghai, the French concession of Shanghai. By the 1930s, Du had become so influential that he was put in charge of the Bureau of Opium Suppression. The guy that was collecting tax money from the opium dealers was the same guy who was supposed to stop himself and the opium dealers. The Triads also cooperated with the army. Some gangs helped the Kuomintang nationalists fight against the Japanese during World War II, while other gangs became criminals that ravaged the Chinese countryside. After World War II, police corruption in Hong Kong was common. It was colluding with the Triads. But after Mao Zedong took power in 1949, he was able to quickly break the Triad power in the mainland. Many Triad members fled to Hong Kong and Taiwan, and also to North America and Europe. The influence of organized crime is believed to have risen as the Chinese economy slowed. Public anger grew after the police chief Peter Fitzroy Godber was found in 1973 to have hundreds of thousands of dollars in overseas accounts from triads. Critics of Hong Kong police also accused him of acting in collusion with thugs who attacked protesters. None of the men who were thought to carry out the attacks were arrested, and officers were seen calmly chatting with the men carrying sticks and metal bars. Law enforcement officials said that there's a good reason for that. During the day, the protesters were fighting with the police, but the protesters were also harassing police family members. So when the police were called to protect the protesters from the triads, they weren't so eager to show up. The police said that this is not natural, of course, but what can you do? Today, organized crime is growing in China thanks to factors including economic freedom, increasing migration, growing inequality, and official corruption. People trafficking, drug smuggling, illegal gambling, and extortion are all lucrative. Gang-related crimes have become a threat to social stability and the economy, is what the Public Security Bureau official said. Murder, abuse, robbery, kidnapping, assault, they dare to do anything. Officials say that the number of gangs can be tracked by the number of dead people pulled from the Yellow River. One of Henan's province worst gangs roamed the countryside unchecked for over a year, robbing farmhouses, killing 76 people. Members of the gang, including its leader, were seen personally cutting the throat of over 40 victims. Fortunately, they were captured and executed in China, according to the Chinese law. Some gangs are run by the police. 10 members of a police-run gang in Inner Mongolia were sentenced to 20 years in prison for robbery, abuse, gambling, and bribery, but they were operating for more than 10 years before being catched. In cities like Beijing and Shanghai, the lack of political accountability, judicial independence, and media scrutiny have created ripe conditions for mobsters to collude with corrupt officials in setting up illegal businesses and extorting money. The police is often paid up to protect the gangsters. A club manager in Shanghai said that we have to pay the police for protection and we have to pay the mobster for protection as well. There are two brothers in the city who always dine together. One is a cop, one is a mob leader. These people are our customers, but they are very dangerous. Prosecuting triad members is very hard because of Hong Kong human rights laws who forbid entrapment. Often when members are arrested, they are convicted of relatively small crimes and serve short prison sentences. On the mainland, the triads often buy protection from the police, the Communist Party, and government officials, but face harsher punishments if they cannot buy their safety. See Big Spender's case in the previous video. He tried, but he couldn't. In the year 2000, the Shanghai Police Court concluded its first big triad trial since the 1940s. Two leaders were sentenced to death but got off with 2 years suspension because the crimes they were prosecuted for, blackmailing, burglars, and karaoke hostesses, were relatively minor. The triads are a response to the social inequality, economic inequality, corruption, and by law, it's very hard to stop the triads. If society gets better, the triads will naturally tone down, as they did in the last 100 years. That's all for today. Don't forget to share, like, subscribe. I'd like to thank the 5 new people that subscribed to this channel and watched the video. I'm grateful. Hopefully videos will get better. I am getting my first year of YouTube vibes when I'm recording these videos. For me, it's an amazing experiment, starting a YouTube channel from scratch and seeing how my language skills develop. There's a long road ahead, but I'm willing to travel it. I'm Alex, and until next time, beware of falling apples.